This episode is proudly supported by Anchor Food Professionals, makers of mainland cheese. Here's Andy Sy from the Notting Hill Hotel.
We've been using them for a few years now, using their tasty and mozzarella cheese. We go through about 135 kilos a week at the moment. So a huge number. So we use it for our garlic bread, our pizzas, our parmas, our bechamel, our cheese sauce for our croquettes and arancini, throughout our lasagnas, anywhere we can really. It's such a good product. You know, having the freshest chips to your fresh chicken to a freshly crumbed schnitzel and topping up with a really high quality cheese is amazing.
For more information, go to anchorfoodprofessionals.com.
It was this year my boys, Luke and Joel, went to America and did a road trip together. And I almost cried when they told me that they'd booked into Chez Panisse to have dinner. I was just like, oh my God.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. It's the summer series on Deep in the Weeds, and last time we caught up with today's guest, she dished up a Christmas special for us. And as always, it's an absolute joy to welcome back legendary chef and restaurateur Alex Herbert. Alex, how are you?
I'm great, thanks, Huck. How are you?
I'm awesome. It's really good to catch up with you. I know we bumped into each other recently, which was lovely, but how are things going?
Enough, though. Not for long enough.
It's never long enough. How are things for you at the moment?
Yeah, things are really good. I'm about to hop on a plane and hopefully gather some more travel food stories. Been working really hard on the Vivid Food program for Vivid next year, 2026. So I'm very excited about that. We've got some new cats to let out of the bag. And yeah, I mean, those two things are, keeping me pretty busy.
Yeah, it's amazing what you've done with Vivid over the last couple of years, and look forward to seeing what you're doing again in the next one. But you've done so much traveling. You must have so many food yarns. Is there any that really stand out for you? You can share.
You know what? It's funny because I do. I don't know if you can see, but I keep scrapbooks when I travel. So when you ask me about food yarns, it's like, actually, I can go back and I can pull out these scrapbooks where I've got all the menus of all the places that I've eaten when I've travelled, and you forget. So it's really nice to have it. I've travelled a bit, not as much as I would like to, but I think I've got a bit more of that on the horizon. But this year I went to Japan rather spontaneously, just for 10 days. And I went with a friend of mine who'd I'd actually met when I was working at Boreal Waters, and that's another travel story if we have time. And Matthew used to live in Japan and actually still has a Japanese company, and he speaks fluent Japanese. So it's another thing that I've decided is it's really only good to travel with people that are natives or speak the language. So we travelled around and ate some amazing meals and in kind of off the main drag places, because he reconnected with lots of his friends from when he lived there 20 years ago. But one of the places that we went to was actually one of the last places at the end of our 10-day stretch when we were back in Osaka, which is a pretty crazy, overwhelming place. And it's very different to when Matthew used to live there because it's obviously a lot more touristy. And we were, going up and down all those alleyways trying to find somewhere to live and eat, and very hungry. And we finally settled on a place. It's one of those restaurants where they serve the food on the paddles to you. And it looked promising, but it actually ended up being awful. And so we left there feeling really disappointed because, life's too short to eat bad food. And we'd just done that. And it was almost our last meal. And so we're making our way back to the hotel, and we passed this hole in the wall that, had not milk crates, but, sake crates and everything out the front. And Matthew just looked at me and said, that's where we should have gone for dinner if we'd come across it sooner. And I looked in the window and I said, you know what? I can go again. And we did. And so we went in and had a second dinner, and this time it was authentic. It was all the locals. The guys in the kitchen were all wearing the gumboots because the floors are covered in grills because there's just constant running water to catch all the scraps and keep the place clean. And they had a huge Odin on the bench top, which, you know, apparently was good because you can tell by the colour of the eggs and the meat that it's been there for at least a day or two, which means it's not brand new. And we sat there and had the best meal of the whole trip, which is a big call. But we had, out of the Odin, we had the beef tendon with the egg and the tofu. We had the karashi, which is and then the tripe, and then we actually had whale bladder with the sweet white miso, and then we had more beef tendon, but this time it was the Osaka specialty, which is the beef tendon that's been braised in dark miso, as well as sashimi, and it was just extraordinary. And we sat there and we were drinking sake, drinking beers. The guys all around us were smoking cigarettes, and it was so friendly. And we walked out of there feeling total redemption. It was great.
Oh, that sounds extraordinary. What a super find after such a bummer meal.
Yeah, and it was. And just that sense of privilege of being able to sit at the bench and Matthew's able to talk to all the people, and you've got that feeling of, oh, I almost belong, or at least my friend does, and all the, you know, and chatting to all the locals. And it was absolutely the icing on the cake in what was a bit of a tourist nightmare.
I love the Barara waters in seed that you planted at the beginning of the show, which we will get to. But you know, you've been overseas so often and so many sort of journeys. Are there other sort of experiences that have had an impact on you?
Yes, I think probably. Like many people that are serious about food, we tend to make these pilgrimages to the restaurants that we've always, you know, followed, bought the books of, you know, looked up to the distant chefs as mentors, even though they wouldn't know me from a bar of soap. And so in 2008, I went to America with a really dear friend of mine, Rachel Grisewood, who started Manna from Heaven. And her and I share the same passion for food, and she's an amazing cook. And so we did the pilgrimage to New York, and we also then went across and went to San Francisco and ate at Chez Panisse and went up into the mountains and ate at Per Se. We couldn't get into French Laundry. So the pilgrimage to Chez Panisse was really special, and we actually ate there 3 times in 2 days, once in the restaurant and twice in the cafe. We pretty much just got out of bed to go to Chez Panisse, go home and then come back. But on the second day in the cafe when we went back for lunch, and the cafe was just beautiful. And I've got the menu here, Exhibit A. And that was on Saturday, September the 27th, 2008. And we were sitting there in the cafe upstairs, and there was a guy having lunch by himself, and we got talking to him. And it turned out that he had had lunch every single day at Chez Panisse since it had opened.
Wow.
And
lucky bugger.
That was like lucky bugger, but also it was just like, wow, now that is a regular customer. It completely rewrote the book on people that say, I go there all the time. It's like, yes, but do you go there every day for lunch?
Yeah, that's right.
And so, you know, he was like this walking, living archive of the restaurant. And I just don't think I've ever been within a restaurant, apart from the people that own it, where you felt like they had this sense of it in them. And it was really special. It was really special. So, yeah. And then last year my boys it was this year, my boys, Luke and Joel, went to America and did a road trip together. And I almost cried when they told me that they'd booked into Chez Panisse to have dinner. I was just like, oh my God. So I felt like I actually said to someone, job done. My boys are wanting to eat at Chez Panisse. No, No, exactly. So yeah, that was another one. And I can't remember exactly what we ate, but it would have all been beautiful. And I've got it all. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, having been there as well and done the pilgrimage as well, it's a restaurant that has to be on people's lists just for so many reasons. Extraordinary, and there's all sorts of restaurants that are kind of on lists like that or hard to get to. Barara Waters is not an easy restaurant to get to, but if you're Australian or you're from overseas, it's one that is highly recommended to experience for so many reasons. What's the story that you have there? I know you have a strong connection to the restaurant.
Yeah. So the first connection I had was the first time I actually went to Burrell was with my family, my parents and my mum's sister and her husband. And her husband, my aunt's husband, Andy, was a farmer, and but he'd been to boarding school in Melbourne, and he was in the same year as Tony Bilson. So when we rocked up to Barara, Tony came out and was like, "Hey, Andy," and it was just like old mates. And so that was kind of the first time. And then when I was at uni, I was walking down Victoria Road, not far from where I live here, and I found like $100 on the street, and it was outside what was then a newsagent. And I went in and said, "Look, I found this money. Here's my phone number. If anyone comes by and says they've lost the money, here's my number." Fortunately, karma, won, and nobody rang me. So after about a month, I thought, okay, I think I can, rightly claim ownership to this money I found. And I was like, well, what do I do with something that kind of you don't have? So it's nice to do something special because it's money that I didn't have anyway. So I booked a table for two at Barara and took my then boyfriend along, and we had lunch at Barara Waters Inn. And so that was pretty special. And then I actually ended up not only breaking up with the boyfriend, but leaving university. And so what happened was I thought, I couldn't concentrate. I decided just to, defer university. And so I thought, well, what will I do? And I thought, well, you know what? I'll leave the country. That's a really great way just to get away from stuff. So I started thinking about, well, if I do leave the country and go somewhere and live somewhere else, what will I do? Because, I'm unqualified or whatever. And I thought, well, I've always loved cooking, which is true. And now it's a bit of a no-brainer. And so we sort of started asking around. My mum asked her friends and family did they know anyone overseas where maybe I could get a job cooking in the kitchen. And mum asked her cousin, Lynn, who knew Gay. And Gay said, no, I don't know anywhere that she can work overseas, but I do need an apprentice, so tell her to give me a call. So I only got as far as the river, but I went and did 2 trials, and I did get a job as an apprentice at Barara, and that's where I worked for up to 3 years. But by then I'd left Barara and I was working on the Central Coast, so I went even further than the river. And then I went and ran the Hardy's Bay RSL. Anyway, and then I decided, you know what, I need to do something else. And so we decided that we would go to lunch to celebrate, just a birthday or whatever. And it was when we were there, we ran into a mutual friend from South Australia who said, I know a restaurant in South Australia that's looking for a temporary cook for 6 weeks. Would you like to go and do that job? And so I packed up house and left Howard behind and went to South Australia for 6 weeks. And it was while I was there that I then met Maggie and ended up working at the pheasant farm with Maggie and Colin. So, Barara has just been this recurring theme. And then funnily enough, things like, I ended up going to Japan to Osaka with Matthew, who I met when I was at Barara all those years. This is the good stuff about getting old. You see the stuff that starts to make sense and repeat. So yeah, that's my Kind of not really a travel story, except that I did eat at Barara a lot, and they were fantastic restaurants, and you had to go across the river. And even the staff meal was good there. So
amazing. Alex, you've always got great stories. I've been fascinated to see what you've been doing with Vivid over the last couple of years. How do you as a foodie approach a program like that and create what you create with it?
So I've been working closely for the last 3 years with Gil Minavini, who was the festival director at that point. And food had only just come in. And so she was very much steering the ship on that because it was a new pillar. You know, it was an added fourth pillar to the existing ideas, light and music. So it was kind of like, let's just watch and see what happens. This year, there's a new festival director, and so I've been handed a bit more responsibility in terms of the curation. And the way I've approached it was sort of just looking at the fundamental principles of it's a Destination New South Wales event. We've always kind of focused on getting some international talent, which we still will do, but let's look at a different way of approaching our dinner series. And so one of the things I've done is create a regional dinner series where basically the regional restaurants and chefs come to Sydney and are hosted by a restaurant that focuses on their region. So that's probably one of the most exciting things that I'm also still able to talk about that, you know, generally, the program launch isn't till March. So there is a bit of an embargo. But yeah, I think, you know, I've always cooked the kind of food that I like to eat. So I've approached the program with what kind of events would I like to go to?
Well, having experienced it firsthand, I know that you always cook the food that I also like to eat, and many people like to eat. Alex,
you.
Always an absolute joy to catch up with you. Thanks for coming on the show again. We'll have to catch up again soon.
Yes, when I get back.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Stay safe and be well.